Hello and welcome to another episode of the Blind Truth Podcast. And this is an episode that I've really been looking forward to, because today we have as a very special guest David Taylor, or Dave Taylor, do you prefer?
Yeah, Dave will do fine.
Dave Taylor, an award-winning voice artist, very skilled actor in many genres, and a very interesting backstory, which I'm sure you're going to enjoy. So, without further ado, thanks very much, Dave, for coming to see us today.
My pleasure.
Oh, lovely. So, how are you? All good?
Very well, thanks. And you?
Yeah, very well indeed, yeah. And how's the cricket going? Because I know you're a big cricket fan, aren't you?
Well, I'm a big Lancashire fan, and I was there yesterday, the second day.
Right.
And it's debatable whether we're going to avoid the follow-on against Hampshire, but we've had a very poor season.
Forgive my lack of knowledge on cricket and the likes. What does a follow-on mean? You mean you've not made enough runs to...
In the first innings, yes, but we've got a young side. I mean, young Rocky Flintoff, son of Andrew.
Oh, really?
He's 16 years and 127 days he made his first-class debut for Lancashire.
Wow. At 16?
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
And he's facing, people like James Vince, who are very professional cricketers, ex-England.
Right.
And it's difficult.
And is he holding his own with these people?
I'm afraid not.
But will he?
Yeah. Yes, he played for England under-19s when he was 16, just gone 16, and scored a century. So
wow,
he's got it in him. And to look at him, the apple hasn't fallen far from the tree.
Right, because his dad was pretty good, yeah. I know who he is, obviously, Andrew Flintoff, but I've never seen him play cricket, but we do have a mutual friend, a fella called Tony Barty.
Right.
He's a mutual friend of Andrew and myself. But so he sounds a bit like my own sport, as you probably remember, was snooker.
Yeah.
He sounds a bit like the Ronnie O'Sullivan of cricket.
Yeah, he could well be. I mean... the coaches have decided, if you're good enough, you're old enough. So they've put him in at just turned 16, and it's a hard lesson.
Yeah.
When you're playing against these guys who've played professional cricket for 16, 17 years,
Yeah, of course.
And particularly ex-international bowlers he's facing, and
wow,
he's finding it tough, but you'd expect that.
One of the things that surprised me about the game of cricket, I had a brother actually who's actually just found out he's very seriously ill a few days ago. He was a really big cricket fan, but he was kind of, I think, too big. He was a huge guy, but he played for, who did he play for? I don't think it was at professional level, but I think it was either Yorkshire or Lancashire or something like that. He was and they wanted him to carry on, but he just lost interest in it completely. I think he discovered girls, shall we say?
Well, it's about 15 or 16 that you discover beer and women. So that's the downward trend. But England have just recruited a guy who plays for Leicester,
right?
Called Hull. He's 6'8" and bowls at a considerable pace. So
I bet he does. Wow.
It looks like that's the way they're going.
Well, the very first time I stepped onto a cricket, do you call it a pitch or a field, or I'm not quite sure.
Field, yeah.
A field. I was amazed because I watched it very briefly on television when Ashes or whatever you call it is coming to a climax and you can feel the excitement. How the distance between the two wickets is absolutely massive.
It doesn't seem that big on television, does it?
I thought it was just a few yards.
Yeah.
I was astounded. I mean, they must really bowl it so quick.
Yeah. Well, if you bowl at 90 miles an hour and it's 22 yards, the length of a cricket pitch, which is the old chain, of course, in the old English measurements.
Right.
Then if you bowl at 90 miles an hour along 22 yards... If you work it out mathematically, you have half a second to react to that ball. So your reactions have got to be good.
I've seen probably because of my friendship with yourself, actually made me look a bit more. And I've seen some people that some don't take a run up, and they seem to have a weird kind of arm. Is this some sort of spin they're doing or something?
There are fast bowlers like Mark Wood, who plays for England at the moment. He's in excess of 90 miles an hour. And it's a hard ball.
Oh yeah, I know. That was the other shocking factor when I
Yeah.
picked a ball up. I thought, Christ, imagine that coming at you at 100 miles an hour or
Yeah.
whatever.
And then there's the spinners who grab the seam on their fingers and twist the ball via the seam so it spins when it lands on the ground. Well,
Hence-
that's the idea.
Yeah, hence the batsman thinks it's going to go in one direction, having hit the ground, but it goes in another.
Well, there are variations. I mean,
Yeah.
they used to call them Chinaman, but you can't call it now
All right.
Chinaman now, so you call it the doosra.
Doosra.
Which means that if you're an off-spin bowler, that means if you bowl right arm
Yeah.
and you bowl the ball to a right-handed batsman, it comes in from outside the offside, which is opposite his leg side.
Ah, I've got you. So you deliberately bowl it out wide and then spin
Well,
it
not
in.
too wide, just about 4 inches. And
4
then,
inches.
And then see how much it spins, and it all depends on the pitch you're playing on.
Wow.
But the doosra will be at the back of the hand, which you can't really see. And as a batsman,
Yeah.
you've got to look at the bowler's hand when the ball leaves the bowler's hand, so you know what it's going to do.
Ah, at least get an indication of what you
Yeah.
think he's trying to do. Hence really it's kind of subterfuge, all the weird twisted arm thing.
Well,
They're
it
trying to
is
hide what they're doing.
If you come out of the back of the hand, that's the doosra, and you think it's going to spin, you're going inside it, and you get an edge, and the wicketkeeper catches it.
So it's quite a sneaky game, really, at the end of the day, isn't it, I suppose?
Well, I remember I used to play golf with my father when I was young, and we often had a debate on the way around the golf course, because he liked cricket as well,
Yeah.
which has a more scientific aspect to it, golf or cricket. Well, of course, I'm going back, sort of 50 years now, but...
Yeah. We knew very little about the sports science back then, I suppose.
Well, the equipment was so different as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the edges on bats now are about 2 inches. It was about a quarter of an inch on my bat when I played.
So it could slip by it very easily if
Yeah.
you're not, and then out you go.
Yeah.
Back to the pavilion, they call it, don't we?
Yeah,
Wow.
but bats now vary in weight. I think both of them used to play with a 2 pound 8 ounce bat, which enabled him to really get hold of the ball. And others like a light bat, so.
Wow. Isn't it weird though? In some sports, they just until you actually have a look. If you look from the outside in, you just sort of make assumptions, I suppose.
Yeah.
As I did. I mean, watching it, as I said, very briefly. My father took me when I was a very young lad.
Yeah.
And I was bored out of my head, I've got to be honest. I was climbing trees. I'm more bothered about getting conkers out of trees on the outside.
Well, it's a good job you went to Old Trafford yesterday then, because you'd been asleep, I think.
Really, was it that bad?
Yes, it was. It would do a cricket.
So it just on cricket still for a second. Why? Who's the number one guy now? Who's the GOAT? Let's say not now. Let's say the GOAT, the greatest of all time.
Well, if you're talking modern times, it's got to be Joe Root. Yesterday scored his 33rd century for England.
33rd.
Yeah,
Sounds like a lot to me. I don't know.
it is. It's 3,300 runs, just in just in in 33 games.
Yeah.
And he's equalled Sir Alistair Cook's record, who was captain of England not so long ago.
Right. Right. So is he an English player then, Joe Root?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, he's a Yorkshireman, unfortunately. But,
So the GOAT, as in the greatest of all time.
He has the number 66 on his back, so he's Route 66. It's one of those quirks he has. His brother actually plays for Glamorgan, Billy, and he has the number 66 on his back as well. So.
It's weird you should mention that, because I was just thinking about that the other day in terms of footballers. And I thought, where's the sense of humour in it? Why can't we have and as you've just mentioned, I had no idea about that. But I always wanted Harry Winks to be number 40.
Yeah.
And no one seems to have thought of it. But if anyone's listed who's relevant, give him number 40. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, 40 Winks. Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. So, right then, Dave. So, your backstory.
Well,
Where were you born, Dave?
I was born in Liverpool.
You're a Scouser.
Well, I didn't stop there long. About 9 months, I think.
Right.
I was one of those poor unfortunates whose parents gave them away.
Right. Didn't know that.
And I only, when I was 40, learnt the story from my mum. She told me what had happened. My father was a police sergeant in the Liverpool Police.
Right.
And bear in mind, I was born in 1948, so my mother knew she was having me at the beginning of the year.
Right.
Because I was born in October, Trafalgar Day, as it happens.
Right.
Um,
Doesn't surprise me knowing you.
and during the pregnancy, my father died of what? I've no idea.
All right.
But of course, there was no national health then.
No.
It didn't come until after, just
Right.
before I was born. She was in a police house, obviously, but when he died, she had to vacate the police house.
Right, yeah.
And she had 5 other children. So she obviously thought she couldn't cope with another one, so gave me away for adoption.
Oh, dear.
Listen, I mean, people say, oh dear, but I was adopted by the most wonderful people you can imagine.
Yeah, yeah.
They gave me the best of life.
Well, the end result speaks for itself, doesn't
And,
it?
you know, I'm forever grateful. And they'll always be my mum and dad.
Oh, of course, absolutely. I totally agree with that sentiment.
When I got married, you know, I had to tell my wife all about myself, well, before I got married. And she said, don't you think you should trace your backstory in case there's any hidden diseases? You don't know what your father died of.
I was
Might
just
have been
gonna
a
say
heart
that.
attack or
Yeah.
something like that. But I said, no. I said, I think it'd be an insult to the mum and dad who brought me up, who are my mum and dad, to say, well, thanks very much, but now I'm going to try and find the people who gave me away.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but the implications medically, not only in case you're thinking about, I'm sure your wife was referring to hereditary diseases and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
but
well,
even donating an organ later on to your own relatives that in blood aren't.
Well, once
what
the
I mean?
children came along, she was more concerned, you know,
Yeah,
about is
yeah.
there any hereditary diseases.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course, in my 50s, I found out that I was diabetic, and then there's a few more complications come along. So
Yeah.
that may be hereditary. I had high cholesterol in my 40s, so
Right.
the doctor suggested that I check all my family for high cholesterol because it was a familial thing,
Yeah.
and things like that. But the overwhelming desire for me was not to disturb the life I had.
Right.
You know, I didn't know how they'd react if I suddenly said I want to find out about my family.
Did you ask them about it, if you don't mind me asking that?
Well, I mentioned it before when I was 40. I found out who my father was and how my adoption came about. But interesting story on that was my father was quite a good amateur footballer. He played for Monton Wednesday.
Right.
And they were called Wednesday because he was a shopkeeper, he was a butcher at that time.
Fair enough, thank you.
And they used to play on Wednesday afternoons because the shops closed on Wednesday afternoons.
Yeah.
So you've now got teams like Sheffield Wednesday who were originally made up of shopkeepers
What? Is that right? I didn't know that.
who used to play on a Wednesday afternoon because the shops were closed. So that's how they came about. And we knew quite a lot of people who played for United at that time, just post-war.
Yeah.
People like Johnny Carey and Jack Rowley and
You probably got on the bus with them to the match in them days.
well, yeah. But they used to be house guests of mine. I was too young to remember this, you know. But
yeah.
apparently Johnny Carey saw me when I was about 3 or 4, and him and his wife were so delighted that they went to the same home and adopted a child from the same home.
Wow.
Which is
That's lovely.
it's not a story I tell many people.
Oh,
but
that's lovely though.
yeah.
Oh, nice one. So, you went through school.
Yeah, my parents, when I was 10, they my dad bought a hotel in Wales, in North Wales,
Right.
and we moved, and I was just about 9 3/4, as they used to say.
Adrian Mole.
Yeah, and moved to Wales, went to the local school, and it was still 11 plus then, and
Yeah.
I found out I had to take a Welsh paper on my 11 plus as well as an English paper.
Oh, God.
So to do that in 12 months, my parents thought was a bit difficult. So they sent me away to school,
Right.
to a boarding school
Right.
at Oswestry.
Oswestry.
Yeah,
Right.
and people say you either enjoy or hate your school days. Well, I didn't enjoy it to begin with. I cried my eyes out at the going back for the second term. You know,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want to go. But
We've all been there.
Yeah, now it's. I look back on it, and I've actually met up recently with a few boys who were in the same year or a year below me.
Yeah.
One of them goes to cricket. He actually lives lives in Burnley, and we had a reunion at Nottingham.
Wow.
At a cricket match, of course.
Yeah.
Because we were all good at cricket at school, and we were all good at football. In fact, we were a team of invincibles.
Wow.
We'd gone through the whole season unbeaten.
Long before Arsenal did it.
Well, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and we were all English.
So if you're listening to Arsenal fans, you weren't the first.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's good to catch up. And then I left school after the fifth form because my father became ill. He was running a hotel, and my mother wanted me to help with that. But it just wasn't for me, the catering business. So I went to a local sixth form college and got my A-level results, and then went to university, and I didn't know what to do. I wanted to do law at Bristol, which was the university for law at the time, but my A-level grades weren't good enough, so I ended up doing politics, philosophy and economics at, where did I go? Bangor University.
Bangor. Mm.
Yeah.
There's a Welsh connection all the way through this, isn't there?
Well, there is, mainly because my parents were in Wales, you know.
Yeah. So one of the many things, knowing you the way I do, Dave, one of the many things I admire about you, and you know I do, is your prison officer service.
Well, yes.
I know I've jumped forward a bit there, I know, but I know there's a very meaty story that I'm really interested in hearing.
Well, it's funny the way I joined, really, because no careers officer ever sits down with anybody and said, have you considered a career in the prison service? It's not the sort of thing you do. Police, the army, you know, everything else, but not the prison service. So
funny that, isn't it? Yeah.
So I was stuck in rented accommodation, aged 27. I had a wife and 4 children by this time, and the rent was killing us, really, and I was in a job that I didn't really enjoy. And my wife saw an advert in the Daily Mail. She doesn't read it now, thank goodness, but
nobody does.
Yeah. She saw this advert for the prison service and said, how do you fancy that? But the clincher was that you got a house with it.
Ah, right.
So I said, okay, I'll give it a go. So I went through the medical and the examination and got in. And in those days, you signed on the dotted line to say you'd serve anywhere.
Right.
So you go to a prison for 4 weeks for training, a local prison, and then you do 8 weeks at the college, which was at Wakefield, which is no longer there now.
Right.
But they have a lovely place called Newbold Revel in Warwickshire now.
Right. I don't know.
Lovely house. And anyway, I went to Wakefield, and halfway through the 8-week course, they give you a piece of paper that tells you where you're going. Mm. Now, they pander to your whims because at the beginning they ask you where would you like to be posted.
Right.
So I put 3 places in the north, you know. And then they posted me to HMP Gartrey, and I thought, where the bloody hell is that?
Is that Gloucester way?
No, it's in Leicestershire.
Is it in Leicestershire?
Near Market Harbour.
Ah, right.
So they give it to you just before your long weekend in the middle of the course, so you go home Thursday night and come back Monday. Mm. So you can discuss it with your nearest and dearest, and if you don't want to come back, they'll save on 4 weeks training, you know. So
there has to be a method somewhere.
Well, yeah, and if you do want to go, then what you do is you go back and finish your training.
Right.
So anyway, I've been lucky because my wife has always said, "Listen, it's your job. You know, we'll do what you want to do."
Well,
and I said, "Okay, we'll have a trip up one weekend when I'm home.
Yeah.
Go and see what it's like. Go and see the surrounding area." And we loved it. And Market Harbour is a great little market town.
Right.
And the prison itself was built on an old disused old bomber airfield, and in those days it was called a dispersal prison, which was high security.
Yeah.
So of course we're talking about the 70s now, and we're at the height of the IRA troubles, and a lot of IRA prisoners were high risk prisoners, category A prisoners.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of those, and some of the worst offenders for other things. In fact, people who weren't terrorists we used to call ODCs. They were ordinary decent criminals. So
I was trying to work it out.
yeah, that was the way they knew that we weren't terrorists. So
wow.
I went there in May 1978. Lived in digs until I was allocated a house, which was in a village about 8 miles away called Fleckney, and it was a beautiful village.
Right.
Got the kids in school.
Lovely.
It had a green and a pond, and it was one of those villages.
Oh, quaint.
It was really nice.
Yeah.
And really enjoyed my time there. But somebody described working in a high security prison as 90% boredom and 10% fear, which is about what it was.
Really.
They have a system in the service of alarm bells. So if an alarm bell goes, you're all carrying radios. It comes over the radio where the incident is. And if you're a spare officer, you obviously got to leave some to look after the prisoners in your area already.
Yeah.
If you're spare, you run like Billy-O to where the alarm is, because it might be one of your mates.
Right, so like first response is
getting a good hiding. Yeah. So one day it might be you, so you hope they're running quite fast.
Yeah.
And there were quite a few incidents. I mean, 5th of October 1978, having been there 6 months, we had a riot and lost 3 of the wings.
Right.
So that wasn't pleasant, but
a full-on smashing everything up riot.
Yeah.
I mean, the frustration of obviously being incarcerated has to, it's got to blow at some point, hasn't it? I mean,
Well, bear in mind, in those days, there were no integral sanitation. You had a bucket in your cell.
It's slopping out and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it seems so uncivilized now,
Yeah.
All right, it's nearly 50 years ago, but it does seem so uncivilized now.
Yeah.
Now you look at...
Yeah, in retrospect,
Yeah. But people still complain that you've got, who has a toilet in their bedroom. Well, you see, people have en-suites. You've got an en-suite,
Yeah.
So.
But whether or not, you can't be escorting people to a laboratory every time somebody wants to go to the toilet. If you've got, how many men were in there? Take it 300 maybe? 100?
Yeah, just under 400.
Right, so I mean that's a massive. You're better off just doing it in a bucket, aren't you?
Well, at that time, one of the dispersal prisons, of which there were 7 at the time, Long Larton in Worcestershire, they had a system whereby you could electronically unlock a prisoner's cell door at night to let them go to the toilet.
But if there's 2 or 3 people in a cell, you're opening...
no, there was only 1 to a cell.
I was going to say, otherwise you're opening it up for the other 2 to do whatever.
We had... we looked after some of the Birmingham pub bombers, and they were doing lifetimes 22.
Wow.
And you think they're never going to get out, so some quality of life has to be there. So everybody in high security has a single cell for a bit of privacy. Whilst you're in a local prison, on remand, say, or doing a short sentence, you would welcome somebody else in the cell with you to play cards with at night, or dominoes, or whatever. I
suppose depending on who they are, though.
Yeah.
You're going to get some right lunatics, aren't you?
Well, you don't know who you're padded up with, I suppose, but... there have been incidents when I've gone into a cell where somebody's broken the glass at the back of the cell, and got a piece of glass in their hand, and I've just told them to put it down, and they've put it down, and I think afterwards, my God, you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, it's dangerous stuff, isn't it? Wow.
But interesting story to come out of the riot of 78.
Yeah.
As I say, I lived in this village about 7 or 8 miles from the prison called Fleckney, and my telephone, there were about a dozen officers lived in this village, in prison housing.
Right.
And I agreed to be the the central phone. So if anything went off in the prison, they'd phone me, and I'd rally round the other.
So were you an officer at this time, Dave, or a
Yeah,
governor?
I was still an officer.
Right.
I'd only been in 6 months.
Ah, right, yeah.
And I used to have to go round and say to everybody, you're needed, there's something happening, get in. So that was the idea of having this phone.
Right.
The good idea was that they paid the rental for it. So,
Yeah,
that's why I volunteered.
Smart.
As I say, on the night of the 5th of October, it went up. And we lost the wing that I was supposed to be on. I was actually going to go on nights. Wasn't there when it took off, but got there about half an hour afterwards.
Right.
And we had a governor on the wing who had my name and address because I was the phone number for alerting everybody who lived in the village to come in and help.
Yeah.
He got my name and address. Of course, the prisoners broke in. I didn't know this at the time. Found my name and address.
Oh, bloody hell.
And everything. So about 3 weeks later, once the melee had been sorted out and we'd agreed how many prisoners we could keep in the accommodation, there was only one wing left.
Yeah.
So about 3 weeks later, I was on a rest day, and I'd taken the kids to school and got back, and it was about 9:20. And the phone rang, and this voice said, "Hello, Mr. Taylor. Did you enjoy taking your daughter Samantha to Bachelor Road School this morning?"
Oh.
So I just put the phone down straight away.
Yeah. With an Ulster accent.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Was it that bad, my accent?
No, I mean that's a credible threat, though, isn't it, Dave? Just
So
in them days especially.
I rang the prison immediately and spoke to the security governor. And within an hour, there was a GPO fella there with somebody from Special Branch.
Right.
And they tapped my phone. They said it probably won't happen again, but just in case it does, we're tapping your phone.
Right.
In the meantime, in the days that followed, I was given special leave.
Yeah, I bet.
Just to stay with my family. And I was offered a transfer to anywhere in England and Wales at public expense because of what was obviously a threat.
Right.
So, of course...
Where did you go?
Well, when it involves me, I'm okay. It's my job.
Yeah.
If there's a threat against me.
Yeah.
Now, it involved my family. It involved my wife and my children.
Of course, yeah.
And their safety was my first concern.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
So I had to sit down with my wife and say, listen, this is the threat. This is what they've offered us.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? And as I said before, I've been lucky because my wife's always said, it's your job. You get on with it.
They don't make wives like that anymore, do
well,
they, Dave?
I'm afraid they don't.
No.
But she said to me, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to stop because I don't want the bastards to win.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So she said, that's what we'll do then.
Wow, what a woman.
And
what a woman.
The Special Branch followed my kids to school for 18 months.
And did the kids know?
No. when I retired, I told them. I told them what had happened, and they all laughed. I said, believe me, it wasn't bloody funny at the time.
Yeah.
But it all passed and nothing happened, so...
Yeah.
I did get a few more phone calls that there was nobody there at, just silence on the other end of the phone. But they changed my phone number and it was still tapped. So, And I thought the Special Branch are really going to enjoy my wife ringing her mother on a Sunday night and enjoy those conversations.
Yeah. So I suppose they'd overhear everything, wouldn't they then?
Yeah.
Wow. But what a brave decision. Not one I'm sure I'm pretty certain I couldn't have taken that decision when it comes to my children and all of that. But good on you. It's one of the, as I said before, this is one of the many, many reasons why I admire you the way I do, and I know you well enough. And incredible story, David. It's
it was
good
hard.
on you. I wonder what did your daughter? Is it your daughters?
I've got 2 sons and 2 daughters.
So they were all followed going to school.
Yeah.
By the Special Branch. So
3 of them were at the same school. It was the eldest daughter was went to school a couple of miles away. But
Yeah. So when you came to tell them, I assume they were adults at this point.
yes, yeah.
And what did they make of that decision?
Well, they were gobsmacked at first, and then just laughed and said, "Oh, we'd have really enjoyed that if we'd known." You know. I didn't enjoy it.
No. I could imagine every day until they got there.
But as my career went on, you had to deal with the terrorists in particular, and we had Iranian terrorists as well as Irish terrorists. The terrorists in particular were good at conditioning you. So they'd batter you with questions. And I was still an officer at this time.
Right.
Batter you with questions and say, I want this, I want that. If they were entitled to it, they could have it. If they weren't entitled to it, you had to say, no, you're not entitled to it, you're not having it.
Right.
But they'd keep at you. And of course, some people were weaker than others, and eventually they'd give in, which made life really difficult for the rest of us.
Can't do that. You've got to stand firm and together.
Yeah, it's called conditioning. I remember another incident that involved Irish terrorists. I'd been there about 2 years, and I was on the Tews landing, which is where we keep all the high-risk prisoners, because they can't tunnel down below because they tunnel into another cell on the ones, and they can't tunnel above because they tunnel into another cell on the threes. So, and they've got to have people either side of them as well. So that's the criteria.
Right.
And the order came up in the morning, just after breakfast. 2 shops closed because the instructors called in sick. Tell 2 shop they were locked up this morning, but they'll be let out this afternoon and watch television.
Yeah.
Okay. So I went along, and there were about 5 Category A prisoners, 4 of whom were Irish terrorists.
Right.
And I went along and told them, if you want to fill your flask, I'm going to lock you behind the door for the morning, you'll be out in the afternoon. Majority of them okay. Came to this one guy. He said, you're not locking me up. So I said, well, yes, I am. You can either do it with a full flask or an empty one. I'm not bothered.
Take your pick.
So he said, I'm going to see the SO, which was the senior officer downstairs, who'd given the order. So I went down, followed the prisoner down to the office, and he ranted at the senior officer to say, this isn't right, just because somebody's sick, we've got to be locked up. And he said, it is right, and you are going to be locked up. And the principal officer, who was the boss of the wing, was at the back of the office making a cup of tea. So, of course, he sees a higher rank, this prisoner, goes for the higher rank, said, this isn't right.
Yeah.
So, after a brief thought, this principal officer said, how many of them are there on the twos, Mr. Taylor? So I said, there's 5 Category A prisoners. So he said, oh, leave them out. And this prisoner turned round and winked at me. Well, that did it.
Oh.
The steam was already coming out.
Oh, it would me as well.
So I said to this PO, which I shouldn't have done, because he's 2 ranks above me, don't you ever do that to me again.
Incidentally, you can swear on it. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't.
And he said, get in my office. So he tore me off a strip. And I said, do you understand why I've said this? And he said, yes, I understand. He said, but I've got a decision to make. I said, well, you made the wrong one.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely undermined your authority.
Yeah. So, of course, that prisoner had something on me now.
Yeah.
Which he was going to use for the rest of the time.
Yeah, I'll just go to the PO every time. Yeah.
So,
wow. Did you ever have to resort to the Mufti squad, as I remember it was called many years ago?
Yes.
Minimum use of force, tactical intervention.
Well, yes, we Mufti only came in. The riot squad and protective gear only came in about 1981.
Right.
Before that, it was every man for themselves, so to speak. We had certain holes that we could use, but legally.
Yeah.
But it was just a case of restraining somebody if they were violent, and hope you got your revenge in first, really.
Kind of pre-revenge.
yeah, but
but what a powder keg environment to work in day out. That has to take an effect after so long. It has to do.
Well, it does, but you don't realise it at the time.
Yeah.
If you work in an environment like that, and I should imagine it's the same in the army when you're in a situation, the sense of humour is absolutely brilliant.
It's crucial.
And the camaraderie is good as well.
Yeah.
So you knew that if anything happened to you, there'd be 20 blokes piling in to help you.
Well, I don't know if I've ever told you this, Dave. I have an ex-girlfriend who was a prison officer for 18 years.
Yeah.
I think she was a PTI or she was some kind of physical trainer. And she is, hands down, one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. Yeah. Shout out to Joanne Lovett, by the way. Lovely, lovely person. 18 years in the job, and she loved it until she didn't, if you know what I mean. And she left very unexpectedly. She just decided to pull the plug, and she went on to train as a nurse afterwards.
Well, they always say about physical training instructors that they have the strength of a cart horse, the speed of a racehorse, and the brains of a rocking horse. So.
She's a very, very clever lady as well.
Yeah, it doesn't apply to them all.
No, she was an amazing lady. She still is. She lives on a barge now. Yeah, she's a boat life person now, and good on her. Yeah. Good on her. We actually very nearly lost our lives together in the sea at Anglesey.
Really?
Very, very nearly, yeah. She's an avid writer and reader as well, and she wrote a piece for some online journal thing, and it was a series of firsts and very nearly lasts, it was called, because we both very nearly perished in the ocean. Got caught in a riptide, both of us, and we were very, very lucky.
Well, I've only once been rescued at sea by the helicopter from RAF Valley.
Right.
I was going out with a girl who had a twin, not an identical twin, but nevertheless a twin. And her boyfriend was at Cambridge at the time that I was at Bangor. And we met up, and he was a keen sailor. So we went to Shell Island in Barmouth and set off from there. The girls would then, it was me and him in the yacht. The girls would drive to Abersock, and we would sail round Traumatic Bay and Cardigan Bay into Abersock from Shell Island.
Nice.
The trouble was we hit a couple of storms right when we were at the zenith of the turning point.
It would be, wouldn't it? Just waiting for you.
And first time I'd ever been sailing. I knew nothing about sailing.
God.
And anyway, the boat capsized. I fell out. I managed to grab a rope at the back.
Gosh.
But it was a nylon rope. And of course, when nylon gets wet, it's very slippy.
Yeah.
Just slipped out.
Yeah, you won't be able to keep hold of it.
I had a life jacket on.
Yeah, luckily.
So Neil, this guy, said, right, I'll just turn around and pick you up. By this time, the swell was about 10 feet.
Yeah.
And I was going up and down. And very soon, the top of the sail disappeared once he'd righted the boat.
Yeah.
So what do you do then? I'm about 8 miles out at sea. I can just about see the shore because you could see Snowdon through the thing near Portmeadow. And I just thought, what do I do now? I tried swimming, which is hopeless in a life jacket and with a swell that big.
Gives you a new respect for the ocean, doesn't it? Something like that.
It does. Yeah. And, I just resigned myself that I was going to die. Yeah. I was only 19.
Right.
I just resigned myself that I was going to die. And once I'd done that, I was quite calm.
Yeah.
And I just thought, save your energy, lie on your back.
Yeah.
The water will drift you in, If you're lucky, you'll survive. If you're not, you'll die. Yeah. And I thought, what a way to die. Nobody here to watch me.
No blaze of glory there, Dave.
No.
You just end up as a bit of shark poo.
Anyway, the helicopter from RAF Valley came over.
Sea King.
Yeah. And put me in there and it winched me up. And the first thing I said to them is, where the bloody hell have you been? Because I've been in the water about 4.5 hours.
Yeah,
it was
you took your time.
Yeah.
God.
But that's another adventure that you think, for the grace of God.
I'm not a religious man, but I know what you mean. When my experience with Joanne was horrendous. We were just, I got slammed against a rock that appeared out of nowhere, it seems. After the swell had dropped a little, and this little rock appeared, and I got slammed against it and was shredded. It looked like a mad cat had been scratching me all over the whole body.
Terrible.
Completely naked. My trunks were gone. They'd been ripped off by the force of it all. And it was a bizarre moment when we finally, Joanne and I got out and climbed over this rock. And on the other side of this rock face, there was a couple there with a tent, and it was a lovely, serene little pond, and they're looking at us covered in blood, walking past them, stark naked, both of us. Must have thought, what the bloody hell have they been doing? But it was... And we both turned Japanese when we sprayed on Savlon in the toilet.
Yeah.
It was terrible, really painful. But again, a life experience, you know. And that's,
they say the sea's a wonderful servant, but a terrible master.
Oh, I honestly was scared to go back in for a while. It just kept bringing it back, and it was.
I've never been sailing again.
No, well, I must admit I did. This riptide, we were literally frolicking. We were on the way home. We'd been there 5 days, and we were literally frolicking about. And it was just above the knee height, the sea, and we just went a little bit further, as you do, a little tiny bit up to the waist maybe. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Joanne said, "Oh, can't feel the floor." And I went, "Don't be silly." And I put my foot down, and I couldn't either. And before you know it, we could feel ourselves going further and further out to sea. So I said, we might be in a bit of trouble, Layla. We need to, you know, and Joanne was a PTI. As I said, she was a fit, healthy girl. And I was healthy. So I put my head down, literally, and gave it everything I'd got to swim against this tide. I looked up. I could see we had 2 kids with us. I could see the kids on the beach. And I thought, right, just aim for them. And I put my head down and I gave it, and I was a good, strong swimmer. Gave it everything I got. And when I looked up again, they were about 4 times further away from me. I thought, that's it, I'm done. Because I was already out, my arms were like lead.
You can't beat a riptide.
Oh, it was, but then I just had a little inkling of what I'd been told years earlier as swim the bowl.
Yeah.
In between each wave there's a bowl, and you swim diagonal in the bowl, and that's how I hit this rock. And that saved us, literally. Yeah. Well, Joanne managed to get to the rock. I was already on it.
Yeah.
And she was going under for the 3rd time, as the old saying used to be. And I saw a hand disappear beneath the waves, literally. And I, sight unseen, just shoved my hand in, hoping to feel her hand, and I did.
Yeah.
It's pure luck, and pulled her out. Some of that strength they talk about when you're in a panic. Yeah. I literally just pulled her out by one arm, and we just sat on that rock, and it was like, what's just happened? Incredible. And then it went away as quick as it came. And as I say, these people with the little tent and the dog running around, and like nothing had happened, looking at us like we were 2 aliens. It was just
terrifying.
Really, really scary. Really, yeah. So, if you don't mind me asking, Dave, you were in... when did you become a governor? Was you as assistant governor or governor? I can't remember. During the Strangeways riots, weren't you?
Yeah, after 4 years at Gartree, one of the governors said, "You seem a bright lad. Have you ever thought about the accelerated promotion?"
Right.
So I said, "No, I don't know what it is." So he said, "Well, it's what it says on the tin, really." He said, "You know, you go through a series of interviews, what they used to call the country house test, because you went to the staff college in Wakefield, arrived on Thursday evening, went home on Sunday night, and you had a series of interviews and exercises to do."
Right.
So he said, "I'll help you with the application." So I said, "Okay, fine." So I did, and I was selected to go for the interviews, and on the weekend, which I did. And when you get there on the Thursday evening, you have to report for 6 o'clock. You allocated a room, you go and put your bags in the room, you come down at 6:30, dinner's at 7, so you 6:30 you sit and you meet your assessors, and there were about 12 of them. There were only about 9 of us on this.
With 12 assessors?
Yeah.
Wow.
So they introduced them, and you couldn't remember their names, so they introduced them anyway. And they said, "Right, here's a piece of paper, just fill this in. It won't take you more than 10 minutes, and dinner at 7. So I looked at this piece of paper, and it said, one of the questions was, list 5 topics you'd like to discuss with your assessors that aren't related to your job and aren't related to your hobbies. And you think, what the hell? That's
cricket.
Well, yeah, I can talk about cricket till the cows come home, but that's in cliches. I put the usual things like television, the ideal babysitter, sport and politics should not intermingle, regrettable but inevitable?
Yeah.
Nuclear weapons, are they really for defence? And a couple of other subjects. And then it said, what in your life has demanded the most of you, A, physically and B, mentally, These, you were meant to do this in 10 minutes.
Really?
So, anyway, filled the thing in, handed it in, went for dinner, discussed with the other 7 people, because we're all sat at the same table, what they'd put down.
Yeah.
And then had dinner, and then it was your own free time then. Meet for breakfast at 8 o'clock, and then for coffee at 8:45 in this lounge. So we met for coffee the next morning at 8:45, and there were no chairs. Everybody's standing up,
All right.
It's something Richard Branson does in his meetings so that they don't last long. He doesn't have any chairs, so everybody
Really?
stands up. Yeah. And anyway, I've grabbed a cup of coffee and I'm just stirring the milk in, and this guy came up, and to me then, I was sort of 30. He looked a really old man, So he said, yes, Taylor, I remember, you're the so-and-so chap. Yes, that's right. He said, ask me a few questions. And there was a silence, while you look at your coffee cup. And
Yeah.
I said, do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions? No, fire away, he said. I said, have you always been a civil servant? He said, no, I was a military man.
Right.
So I looked at him and I thought, this is sort of 1980. And I'm thinking, I wonder if he was old enough to be in the Second World War. I would be insulting if I asked
Gosh.
him, So I said, do you mind me asking, were you old enough to be in the last conflict? And he said, oh, yes, I was old enough. He said, because he was about 78, this bloke.
Bloody hell.
And he said, yes, I ended up as General IC Troop Movements in Europe. So I thought, bloody hell, nuclear weapons, are they really for defence? That went through my mind. Anyway, he did interview me, and he knew Churchill.
Wow.
And as you know, I'm a big fan of Churchill, and I've studied his life. So we ended up talking for 25 minutes about Churchill instead of the interview, and it was really good.
Job done.
Yeah. But another guy who interviewed me, and he said, how are you at keeping secrets? I said, what do you want to tell me? So he said, I don't want to tell you anything. I'm just asking if you're good at keeping secrets.
Yeah.
I said, well, it depends. Is it personal? Is it to do with work? Or he said, irrespective, are you good at keeping secrets? I said, if needs be, yes. So anyway, he turned out to be Roger Hollis, who was head of MI5 at the time.
Oh, Christ, really? Wow.
And when he died, they found out he was the 6th man. He was a double agent.
He was? Oh, bloody hell.
So
Wow.
whether that was why I passed, because he thought I was good at keeping secrets, I don't know. But, that was an experience. Anyway, I found out I'd passed. So what happens then is you're promoted fairly rapidly to AGT, which is Assistant Governor Trainee.
Right.
So I went to Bedford from Gartree, which was commutable because it was only 35 miles away from where I lived. Did a year there, and then went on to, after I finished my trainee, you become an AG2. So I went on to Wormwood Scrubs. And then came up to Manchester in 1985.
Just in time.
Well, this is 5 years before.
Oh, was it 5 years? Oh, was it that?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So anyway, got my feet under the table at Manchester. And you were talking about stressful environments. Excuse me.
The frustration and being incarcerated and all of that.
Yeah. I mean, you didn't realise it was so tense until you went to another place. When I left Gartree and went to Bedford, which is a local prison, in other words, it takes people direct from the courts.
Sure.
The atmosphere seemed so much better. And it seemed as if you'd been lifted down a level, because you didn't go stressful to work every day. You didn't realise it. But when you went somewhere else, you did realise it.
There isn't somebody plotting to murder your children on the way to school at this point. That always helps, doesn't it? Yeah.
And anyway, when I got to Manchester, And Manchester had a reputation for being quite a disciplined prison, along with Wandsworth. And because they're both built on the same style, Victorian prisons.
Yeah, the spider.
Yeah, if you stand on the centre, you can look round and see all the wings.
Yeah.
So, anyway, during my induction at Manchester, there was a guy, I won't mention his name, a principal officer, who was doing the Observation and Classification Board, which is where you decide what category these prisoners are going to be, where they're going to move on to from your prison.
Right.
And while they're here, what work they're suitable for.
It's kind of allocation, isn't it?
Yeah. OCA unit, Observation, Classification and Allocation.
Yeah.
And I sat in on the board. And one bloke came in, and this PO looked at him. He said, right, he said, you're in for assaulting the police, is that right? He said, yes. He said, well, don't assault anybody here because we hit your back, all right? So, and I thought, what kind of place have I come to? You know. But,
kind of true, though, isn't it?
Well, I suppose it is, really. But,
Do you remember Mr. Mackay in Porridge?
I do.
The 2 rules of Slade Prison.
Yeah.
You remember 1, you do not write on the walls. 2, you obey all the rules.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, that leads me nice as a bit of a segue, if you like, into you become an actor after your... Oh, we do want to talk about the riots at Strangeways, though, if that's okay.
Oh, yes.
If you don't mind, that is.
No, yeah. I was... it was April the 1st, 1990, and it was a Sunday morning.
Right.
I was at home, a weekend off, because they gave us weekend off in those days. He worked every other weekend.
In those days, yep.
And it was... I got a phone call at the same time as my son came racing downstairs to say that Dad, Strangeways is on telly. So I took the phone call. They said, can you get in straight away?
Yeah.
We've lost the chapel.
What was your rank at this point, Dave?
I was AG1.
Right.
So I said, yeah, okay. So just a bit of background. This is 1990. 1987, we'd introduced, or the Home Office had introduced a thing called Fresh Start,
right.
which did away completely with overtime, because officers lived on overtime up until then.
Yeah.
They could be working 60 hours a week, and that's the way they boosted their salary.
Yeah.
There was no overtime, and there was a strict number of people on. So if somebody went sick, you couldn't replace them. You couldn't call somebody in on overtime because that wasn't to be.
Right.
So it took us a good 12 months. You're holding 1,700 prisoners at this time.
Yeah.
And it took us a good while to sort of indoctrinate people to say, well, I'm sorry, you ain't going to get anybody else. This is it.
Yeah.
We hoped it would lessen the sick people we had.
Yeah.
But if you're ill, and that's it. But the Fresh Start didn't help. And on 1990, 1st of April, I got there and I waved my warrant card, at the police who blocked off the road, and they told me to park over there. I parked over there, and I was walking up to the old gate. We've got a new gate now, but the old one was on further up Southall Street.
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
Opposite Carnarvon Street.
Yeah.
And so I walked up, and I saw officers outside the gate. And I thought, my God, they haven't got to the gate of the prisoners.
God.
So they were beckoning me on to run. So I started running, and then I knew why, because a slate landed at my feet.
Oh.
So I went in, and I said, right, who's in charge here? Nobody in charge. Right, okay. You do this, you do that. You get a pen and pencil, write down all the orders that are going to be given, and I'll look after this gate area.
Right.
By this time, there were a lot of prisoners on the roof.
Yeah.
They were throwing slates. And the inner gate, had no plastic on it. It was just bars. So some slates were coming through the bars, with a bit of luck, the prisoners hoped, were coming through the bars. Some prisoners were coming out the end of A Wing, which is to the left of the gate, at the back end of A Wing. They didn't want anything to do with it.
Right.
So there was an officer on the door, you know, letting people out who wanted to come out. And they went into the visits room. And suddenly the visits room was full. So a senior officer in there said to me, we need to get these prisoners out. So I said, right. By this time there was a sergeant, police sergeant in the gate with me. There was an inspector outside the gate, and he was to pass on any orders to GMPHQ as to what we wanted.
Right.
So I thought, we're going to need some transport. Where are we going to put these prisoners? So a few phone calls later, we said we'll put the prisoners up in the workshops at the top end of the prison. And we could do that by taking them round the outside. So I said to this inspector, we need some transport. You know, some Black Marias, put them in, take them over, go up the gate, the top side, and then put them in the shops.
Got Salford Van Iron next door.
Well, yeah. Yeah, they're not migrants, you know, illegal migrants. They have to be locked up separately.
Yeah, I know. The sweat boxes and stuff.
But anyway, we got coaches in the end. And
coaches?
Just put prisoners on coaches with 4 or 5 staff. And
I mean, I suppose if they're kind of short term, it's not worth smashing the way out of a coach and legging it, is it?
Well, no, it was only about 300 yards.
Yeah.
This trip to the corner of the top of Southall Street.
Yeah.
And into what we call the Croft area.
Right.
Of course, there were lots of things to organise. Everyone knew was anybody who was in the jail by, you know, sort of 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Because it started in the chapel at about 11:15. And, of course, you had to think about, we'd got squads coming in from Wakefield, Garth, Weimar, all the local prisons.
Yeah.
Sending 2 squads of riot squads, you know, in to help us.
Yeah.
And, of course, you've got to think about feeding them then. So you think, well, how are we going to feed them?
No one thinks about this stuff, do they? Everyone's got a bit the logistics of all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are we going to feed them? Where they're going to sleep?
Yeah.
You know. So anyway, we rang up Manchester Airport, and they delivered 1,000 meals on Sunday night.
Right. Bloody hell.
To us. And if ever I fly again, I shall fly Air Portugal, because their beef in wine sauce was absolutely beautiful.
See, there's always a silver lining,
well,
isn't there?
Absolutely. But,
Slate's getting lobbed at you, but you had some hell of a meal.
So by the end, by about 8:30 in the evening, we'd had to give prisoners safe passage through. Well,
yeah.
And we did it by the old Roman centurion shields, you know, a shield going up 45 degrees and then a shield over the top.
Yeah.
To get the prisoners from there to the gate and then onto the coaches.
Without a bit of Welsh slate going in the back of their head.
Well, yeah. And that was where the most injuries occurred, really.
Really?
Particularly to staff, because they're not 6-foot shields, they're 5-foot shields, so you've got to leave something bare, and it was the legs.
Yeah.
So a lot of leg injuries.
I remember watching it on the news. It was never off the news while it was happening.
Yeah.
I think, what year was it again? In 1990?
1990,
yeah. I'd have been like 24.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was... And it's... I don't know, I mean, I sort of felt sorry for the prisoners in some ways, but because that powder keg that we now know about later on, obviously this is a result of a lot of frustration bottling up, isn't it? And I mean, I went on to watch the documentary, and I saw you actually on the documentary before we actually knew each other.
Yes.
So I went back and watched it after you and I met each other, and yeah, I could see you was a big bull of a man, and you know, and all that, and the moustache going on, and sleeves rolled up. I remember shirt sleeve order, and I thought, bloody hell, wouldn't have liked to mess with you back in the day.
Yeah, but there's only so much you can do when you're faced with 1,700 prisoners rioting.
No, I mean, there's so little you can do. I mean, I suppose it's just to contain them and let them blow themselves out.
That was exactly it.
It's got to be, hasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, what else can you do? You go in there, you're a dead man, aren't you, really?
Well, we called it, between the police and ourselves, we called it Operation Container.
Well, yeah, I remember the other Operation Container when they ran out of prison spaces, locking people up in police stations.
Well, interesting story about that too. there were quite a lot of people kept in police cells. And the Home Secretary of the day, I won't mention his name, he ordered that all prisoners in police cells be put into police vans and just driven willy-nilly around the city. So when he stood up in Parliament and say there were no prisoners in police cells, he wasn't telling a lie.
Oh, my days. Why doesn't it surprise me that? It should, but it doesn't. Yeah, it's a bit crazy. So you've gone on to be an actor. You've gone on to be an award-winning voice artist as well, as I know. You and I did I think my claim to fame in that side of things at the minute is the Tour de France thing we did, of course.
Yes, for Supersport TV in South Africa.
Yeah. Did I tell you that we had the analytics back from that, the listens it's had?
No.
We've had 3.9 billion listens.
Oh, right.
So that's half the world, Dave. I've listened to your dulcet tones talking about people struggling to get up a hill on a bike.
Well, I must say I wouldn't have listened to it because I have no interest in cycling.
Snap.
You can tell by my figure, really.
And mine too. Yeah. So you're with Magoo Management, obviously, as we know. And I know it's very quiet at the moment. It is everywhere. All these actors that are listening and watching us here right now will know it's never been worse. It's never been worse. But we will carry on and we will get through it. And
my interest in acting started at school.
Oh, right.
Because I was always wanted to be in the school plays,
right.
Even as a junior. Do the Christmas pantomime at 8 years old.
Wow.
I wanted to be one of the kings. I didn't want to be a sheep or anything like that.
Yeah. So has it ran through everything you've done? Has it always been in the background?
Yes, I did it
that.
at university.
Wow, I didn't know that either.
And got presented with a cup at university. I took the lead in a play called Father, Dear Father, when I played the father.
Bloody hell. I didn't know that, Dave.
Won that. And that, if I'd had a bit more chutzpah about me, I'd have done it as a career. But of course, it wasn't safe. By that time, I'd met somebody who wanted to marry me and have my children, so it just wouldn't pay the bills. So
no, it's the same today. People that are picking it up now, they have to have a second income. It's a lot easier to have a second income now. A lot of people make spectacular amounts of money online now. And you can blend that around auditions and all of that stuff. It's easier now, I think.
Yeah, they do. But, as ever, I think with acting, if somebody sees you, right time, right place.
That's what it is.
And you get that opportunity, then you can slip in.
Well, I tell a lot of people when I teach here at Magoo and people that we represent that, you can do everything right, absolutely everything professionally, correctly, and be top of your game, and it doesn't guarantee you're going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
But not doing all of that guarantees you won't.
Yes.
It's a kind of an unfair balance, really, but...
Well, if you're going to do something, do it properly.
100%, absolutely. Yeah. And if it's meant to be, you will be on that spot when that person who's looking for someone just like you will spot you. And that's all it takes.
Yeah.
I tell people in our classes that I teach a beginner's class as well sometimes. And, you've just got to... You've got to give it, put all your embarrassment and shyness, leave that at the door. And this is your moment. This is your 30 seconds to sell yourself. Yeah. But when they say to me, what are the chances of making it? Well, first of all, it depends what you define as making it.
Yeah.
We're all on a Harley Davidson on 3,000-mile journey in a straight line across Australia or whatever. Don't think about the end result. Just enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
And enjoy what you're doing. Get fun from it, and do it professionally, of course. But I liken them to if you drive past almost any town and city in this country on a Saturday or Sunday, you'll see young kids playing in football teams, and 10 of them kids throughout the country might make it as a footballer. And I think the odds are about the same.
Yes, I mean, the thing for me is that whatever I've done, I've always tried to give my best, and acting is no different.
Yeah.
If you're going to give a performance, you study, learn your lines, give that performance with emotion.
Learn your craft, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Dedicate yourself to it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're cheating yourself And you're cheating the people who are watching.
Of course you are, and cheating the other people that are going for the same audition as
Yeah.
well in many ways.
Yeah.
You know, again, I tell people in our agency, when you go for an audition, the audition starts when you enter the building, not when you go into the audition room.
Yeah.
Because very often there are cameras around and you are being watched and observed, and are you punctual? This is why I always follow up when I send someone for an audition. I always, successful or otherwise, I always ask for a report.
Yes.
Were they punctual? Were they, on time?
Yeah.
Were they clean? Were they off the book? Did they conduct themselves? And is there anything you can give us to make it better next time? And I think it's a fair enough comment. And I've had some scathing reports, and I've had some good ones.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I remember a story about Mark Warren, who I met some years ago, when he did the audition for Vanderbilt, which was the new series.
Right.
And he went in, there were about 4 people behind a old style audition, 4 people behind a desk.
Yeah.
And you're a chair about 10 yards from them. you know.
The panel.
Yeah. And sit down, he said, right, have you prepared anything? He said, no. He said, well, okay, just tell us something about yourself then. Well, they knew all about him because he's quite a famous actor, Mark Warren.
Yeah.
So he just sat in this chair and he looked around because he knew the type of character they wanted Vanderbilt to be.
Yeah.
And he just looked round and didn't say anything for about 40 or 50 seconds. And people got a bit uncomfortable.
Mm.
And he just said, I think that's how you want my character to be.
Is this the Dutch detective?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Did he not play the necktie killer in a film?
I don't remember that one.
No?
No.
When he hid a body in the back of a truck full of potatoes and it dropped out halfway down the street.
All right.
No, I don't remember that.
Sounds like a comedy.
That's it. It was one of the films I watched as a very young man, and it was good. It was gripping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's a good actor.
Yeah, good. I remember the music from the vault music. Yeah. He's a good actor. You're right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh well. So what? Just very quickly then, Dave, because we need to wrap it. I'm afraid I could talk to you all week, but so what's next for Dave Taylor, the actor and voice artist?
Well, I keep looking out for voiceovers really because you don't have to learn any lines. That's the secret.
Just not rattle the paper.
That's the secret to voiceovers. But I really want to do acting as well.
Yeah.
Really, really do.
Yeah.
Because, last year, for instance, well, not last year, the year before, I applied for 4,000 voiceover jobs and got an answer from 40 and did 4.
It's not a great strike rate, is it?
0.001%.
Yeah.
Success.
It's weird, isn't it? It is hard out there. There's no doubt about it. But those of us that keep going, I found out from a certain platform that I won't mention just last week that 53 agents in London alone closed down last month.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
There's just no work. There's no work out there at the moment, and so-called bigger, better-known people are working for a lot less money now.
Yeah.
So where the old days, someone that's been on a soap, any of the soaps, will do an advert, but they'll want £5,000, £6,000, £7,000 to do a 2-minute advert.
Yeah.
Now they're doing.
Well, so do I.
But they're doing it for £500 now. So if you're selling a product, do you want someone that's already famous, or for the same money, someone that no one's heard of?
Yeah.
You'll take the famous person because they're working for pennies now.
Yeah.
I know one. I won't name her, but she was on EastEnders for quite some time, and both she and her husband, to their credit, in my opinion, during the lockdown, became Amazon delivery drivers. Both of them.
Yeah. Her
and her husband are both famous actors, and just to keep the wolves from the door and feed the children and keep them in school and all of that stuff. And takes some do. It's a special type of character for me that someone who's been famous can do that, to say, well, look, we need to do something here to carry on, and of course she's back acting again now and doing very well, and good for her.
Well, you were talking about success. It depends how you measure success. Success to me is fulfillment in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Not necessarily financial.
No,
It's just
it does help though, doesn't it?
yeah, of course it does. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm retired. I've got a pension.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't have to scratch
Well, it's not luck, Dave. You've earned that massively.
and desperate, you know,
Yeah,
for money to earn from voice acting or
there's nothing worse going to an audition. I've done it myself, where you think, if I don't get this, I'm not eating next week.
Yeah,
That brings pressure so hard that it will probably affect your performance anyway.
Yes.
You know, so if you know you're okay regardless,
Yeah.
that has to ease a bit of the pain and a bit of the weight off your shoulders to enable you to really shine.
Yeah.
So.
And I finish with just one funny story.
Of course you can, yeah, absolutely.
In prisons, governors do adjudications, which are they're hearings about prisoners who've transgressed prison rules.
Yeah.
And they follow a specific format, you know. Give your name and number to the governor. Have you received the charge? Do you understand the charge? Have you made a written reply? Do you plead guilty or not guilty? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
So there was one particular prisoner who was decided to be stroppy. And I said, have you read the notice of report? And you wait for a reply because you have to write everything down verbatim. And he said, it is what it is. I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand that. What does it mean, it is what it is?
Yeah.
He said, it is what it is. I said, do you want to plead guilty or not guilty? He said, it is what it is. I said, all right. I'll put a not guilty plea and we'll hear the evidence. Have you anything to say? It is what it is. Oh. So I'm getting a bit cheesed off with this by now.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought it was a particularly serious offence, drug offence.
Right.
And he was an IPP prisoner, which is has got no end to the sentence.
Indeterminate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't send him to the judge to take days off his sentence because it's an indeterminate sentence.
Yeah.
So I thought long and hard, what am I going to do? And it was a Class A drug. So I thought, right, I'll give him just below the maximum of everything. Yeah. So the maximum I could have given him was 28 days cellular confinement. So I gave him 21. I could have given him 91 days loss of canteen. So I gave him 81.
Right.
So when I'd finished, he got up and tried to tip the table up because there's a couple of tables between me and him for a very good reason.
Yeah. Arm's length.
Yeah. He tried to tip the table up. Well, we're not daft. We tie these things to the floor, bolt them to the floor.
Yeah.
So he said, why didn't you give me the fucking 28 days? I said, it is what it is. Now, fuck off.
I love it. I can put myself in his shoes or even his slip-ons, and I get it. Yeah. That's brilliant, Dave. Yeah. And it actually sums your character up very much from what I know of you. It does. But hey, listen, I could talk to you all week. I'd be grateful if you come back another time and let us carry on.
Love to.
But listen, thanks for coming. Really appreciate your time.
Okay.
And it's good to know you. It's good to be a friend of yours. It's an honour, actually, to be a friend of yours. Honestly, I'm not just saying it. You're one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life, and I couldn't have more respect for you if I tried.
Well, here's to the future.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dave.